Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Lieutenant Colonel Paul Murphy. We warmly welcome the family of Corporal Luigi Frederick Rimoldi, whose story will be told shortly. The ACT Emergency Services Agencies comprise over 1,500 full-time and volunteer personnel. Their duties include providing emergency management services to the ACT and surrounding southeast New South Wales region. We sincerely thank them for their efforts in ensuring the safety of our community. We are honoured to acknowledge Emergency Services Agency Commissioner Georgina Whalen and Emergency Services Agency Assistant Commissioner Corporate Wayne Phillips. Chief Officer ACT Fire and Rescue Matthew Mavity and Acting Chief Officer of the ACT Rural Fire Service Ken Hall, Acting Chief Officer of the ACT Ambulance Service Rebecca Lundy, and Chief Officer of the ACT State Emergency Service Anthony Drahim, and all emergency services personnel who are in attendance this evening. We also warmly welcome the delegations from the Royal Australian Navy College Cresswell and the New South Wales RSL sub-branch of Cumberland. As always, we warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Pearcedale Primary School from Pearcedale, Victoria. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations over more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Luigi Frederick Rimoldi. Luigi Rimoldi was born on the 17th of March, 1884 in Milan, Italy. One of 3 children born to engineer Achilles Rimoldi and his wife Antonietta. When Luigi was 2 years old, his family moved to Australia, settling in the suburbs around Sydney. Luigi was educated in the public school system and for a time lived in the country town of Forbes. He later went to Teachers College and worked in Sydney schools. However, he did not choose to continue his teaching career and instead moved to Perth. There, he was an active member of the militia and participated in many local sporting clubs. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Luigi was working as an Assistant Secretary of the Perth Children's Hospital. Luigi Rimoldi enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 19th of May 1915. Assigned to reinforcements of the 16th Battalion, he began a short period of training. He embarked for active service less than a month later, starting from Fremantle on the troop ship Chilka. After several weeks at sea and a short stop in Egypt, Private Rimoldi joined his unit on Gallipoli. He was promoted to corporal upon arrival, and within a few days was drawn into his first battle, when his unit attacked Turkish positions, hoping to capture the high ground between Hill 971 and Chinook Bear, in order to allow Allied forces to advance across the peninsula. Rimoldi and his comrades captured the hill at great cost, before being forced to withdraw by enemy reinforcements. After the failure of the August offensive, Rimoldi and his comrades undertook a predominantly defensive role. In November, Rimoldi became ill and was evacuated from Gallipoli, suffering from jaundice. While he was recovering in hospital in Cairo, Allied forces evacuated from Gallipoli and returned to Egypt, where the AAF began a period of restructuring and reorganisation. Rimoldi was released from hospital in late January 1916 and was with the 16th Battalion for a few weeks before being transferred to the 28th Battalion. He continued training for a few weeks before embarking for the Western Front on the 16th of March 1916. Rimoldi arrived in the French city of Marseille after a 6-day voyage. From there, they were sent north towards the border of France and Belgium. Over the weeks that followed, Rimoldi's battalion was engaged in training, as well as routine stints in the trenches, before being sent south in July to take part in an attack on German positions around the village of Pozières. The 28th Battalion entered the front lines on the 28th of July 1916 and commenced their attack on the enemy's trenches the following morning. Private Herbert Harris, who was also caught in the fighting, described the battle. Imagine men dug in a few feet into the ground and shells falling just like rain. Trenches blown up and men digging for dear life to rebuild them or rescuing their comrades who were buried, and in most cases the rescuers were also buried by the shells. When entering the trenches, we were bombarded with tear and gas shells, which made us wear our gas helmets. It was almost impossible to see and hard to breathe. I have heard officers and men say that the landing and the Lone Pine battle at Gallipoli were a picnic compared to this last fight. The fighting continued until nightfall, at which point the 28th Battalion was withdrawn to bivouacs behind the lines. The day's fighting had cost the battalion some 523 casualties. Among the dead was Corporal Luigi Rimoldi, who had been killed in action in the early hours of the attack. One of his comrades wrote to Rimoldi's sister, "Your brave, generous brother died on July 29, leading his men like a true and brave soldier. Poor Rim. He was liked and respected by the whole company, and I'm sure if you could have seen him on that awful night, coolly leading his men, cheering and encouraging them through that hell of fire and shells, it would lighten the load of grief which his death will cause you. Rim was in charge of a squad of men in a particularly hot part of the line. When they reached the enemy's first line, a bullet from a machine gun went through his left breast, and he died, cheering his men on to the attack. I might say that should it be God's will that I must go under, I only hope that I will die as gloriously as your brother and my friend. Luigi Rimoldi was 32 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name, listed on the Villiers-Bretonneux Memorial in France, is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Luigi Frederick Rimoldi, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you are able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, That concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.